I'm just going to start in some prayer, and then let's get going. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time of this conference and just these breakouts and just how fruitful and a blessing it is just hearing from these speakers, Lord. And I just pray that you be over this breakout and the words that I'm going to share and what Curt's going to share, and that it wouldn't be our words, Lord. These are actually your words that you've given us, and I pray that we just be faithful stewards of them and presenting them. And so just be with us, Lord, and be with the rest of the conference and the worship night tonight, Lord, that you just have your way and that we be open to it. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. There we are. Yeah, Calvary Crunch. All right. Well, welcome again. My name is Caitlin, and I have a privilege of being on staff here at Calvary Church. I am under the communication team, and I like saying communication because it's a nice umbrella term for what I do. I originally started here as a social media person, and it's kind of grown from that, so I have a lot of hand in event and message graphics. I oversee the social still. I'm a photographer and videographer. You've probably seen me running around and zipping past you throughout this conference, and I have a lot of hand in the branding that happens at the church, if you want to call it branding, just making sure logos look the same, and we're just in unison of updating things, and so other things like that. So communication is a big umbrella term I like to use, and easy way. It grows and expands, and it's always a new surprise when I get to the office and see what's on my desk. And and honestly, when I was asked to do this breakout, I really struggled with what I was going to say. I have to just start there. Like, first of all, creative is like, I got the topic of creativeness, and I was like, okay, thank you. That's like, that's such a huge field and such a big direction that I could take it with. And, you know, since I did a lot of the graphics and the slides for this conference, I got sneak peeks of Royce's and Caitlin's stuff. And I was like, geez, they already got the good stuff. And it's because they sent it first. I was like, I can't steal what they have. And they have a lot more experience and all that stuff. And then I kind of went down a bunny trail of just like self-doubt and overthinking the whole idea of a breakout until, I have to say, thank the Lord for his faithfulness, because he stopped me before I got too far. And he just slowed me down and just reminded me of when I first started and what I was feeling is the phrase, what good are the tools that you have without a toolbox to put them in? And another way of saying it is, what's another good list of websites and apps that I could obviously give you if you don't have the basics, which is the vision and a heart behind even having a creative team in the first place. So maybe you're in that spot. Maybe you have the desire to get something going brand new in your church, and you're just like, I'm ready to go. Maybe you've been doing it for a while, and you're just kind of feeling that like burnt out, or just like, why am I still doing this, or it's not getting anything. So either place that you're at in that spectrum, this is what the breakout is about. And I wanted to share just a little bit about the vision, the heart that we have developed here as a creative team with Calvary Church. And a little later, we split the breakout in half. So Curt is going to take over the practical things of how to actually use what I'm going to share, the heart and the vision, practically with a team. So whether you're a team of 1 or 100, it's possible to have a creative team in your church, and it starts with a heart and vision. So let's get to it. I don't think we ever did my own slides, so just pay attention. So my first point is, we love the world and we don't worship it. And you're probably like, what? We love the world? Don't you know the world that we live in? Don't you know how sinful and gross it can be, Caitlin? What are you saying? We have to love the world. And yes, I do know what the world we live in. And I hope I can explain it to you as I go forward to help you begin to understand where I'm coming from when I say love the world. And so turn with me to Luke 5. This is where I'm going to start. And I already said this, if you came in a little late, I forgot my Bible, my run out, so I have it written here, so excuse me for that. I'm actually also going to read it from the Message, so if you want to open your app, and you're like, again, the Message, but bear with me. I really loved, I read it in the New King James, and then I loved how the Message really worded it, and it really resonated with what I want to share. So Luke 5, verse down to 27. So it says, after this, he went out and saw a man, speaking of Jesus, named Levi, at his work collecting taxes. And Jesus said, come along with me. And he did, walked away from everything, and he went with him. Levi gave a large dinner at his home for Jesus. Everybody was there, taxmen and other disreputable characters as guests at the dinner. The Pharisees and the religious scholars came to his disciples greatly offended. What is he doing, eating and drinking with misfits and sinners? And Jesus heard about it and spoke up. Who needs a doctor? The healthy or the sick. I'm out here inviting outsiders, not insiders. An invitation to a changed life, changed inside and out. And I think the use of social media, and they kind of touched in the breakout of just the idea of being creative in the church, has received a lot of negative backlash within the church for the past couple decades. We're putting too much focus on what we look like, that it's actually doesn't matter. It's the message that really matters, not how it's presented. It doesn't really matter what we look like, and we shouldn't even have to look like that to even think that we're looking like the world or presenting it in a way is just going too far. And I do, to a point, agree that there is a line that we shouldn't cross as believers, that we do not look like the world in some aspects. But I want to go back to what Jesus did in this example in Luke 5 here. Where was Jesus? He was sitting in the midst of sinners, the worst of the worst. According to the Pharisees and the religious rulers of the time, he was sitting with the people that the religious thought at the time were the worst of the worst. But where was Jesus? He was simply just loving the people and being with them. And I want to ask you, how are we supposed to reach the world if we don't know them? If we aren't willing to sit in the midst of them and get to know them? If you don't know what's capturing their hearts, if you don't know what the latest look and the latest aesthetic they're trying to achieve to fulfill something in that they're missing. I'm not saying at all, so don't misunderstand me, that you have to agree with what you see in the world. You don't have to participate in any of it. If you don't want a TikTok, don't get a TikTok. If you don't want an Instagram, I'm not going telling you to go get an Instagram to be successful as a creative. I'm just saying to know something about it. Because when someone mentions it, and instead of bashing it or saying what a waste of time it is or what a waste of resources it is, knowing something about it starts a conversation that you might not have already had if you didn't know. It opens the door to having a relationship with someone you might not have in the beginning. Jesus sat among sinners and was still Jesus. He was in the world without ever changing anything about himself. We don't read anything about Jesus changing because he sat with them. It's actually the opposite. People change because they sat with him. Jesus called Matthew out of tax collection, right in the very verse that I read. One of the worst professions you could have back then as a Jew. People hated that guy. And later, as you read on in John, he becomes one of his disciples. He was changed because he came and sat with Jesus. Love the world you're a part of and be appreciative of the creativity that's all around you. Be relevant, be authentic, but according to what Jesus has called us as believers and following his example and sitting amidst them. But I think it's very important that you can't say you love something and not know anything about it. You can't really truly say you love the world when you don't know who they are. That's not true love, and it's the same way you can apply it, that we can't say we love Jesus and not know anything about him or his character. And I like to explain it this way to my creative team when they join. When I was a kid, there was really special wrapping paper that we had in our basement, and I was not allowed to use it for just fun crafts or activities I wanted. It was only reserved, my mom reserved it for the best occasions. And I hated it that I couldn't touch it. But can I tell you the feeling that I had when I came down on a birthday or on Christmas or maybe even my parents just blessing me and I saw that wrapping paper. And I thought I was the most special girl in the world because I got that special wrapping paper that I wasn't normally allowed to touch. And as believers and as church creatives, what better occasion do we have to use that special wrapping paper, that very special, eye-catching wrapping paper, than to spread the love of Jesus with it and to wrap it around the love of Jesus and the gift that is life-changing to the world. Something that looks good and catches people's attention. It looks familiar, it seems familiar, but there's just something about it that's different, and it makes them stop and think. It's not reserved like the Pharisees implied it. The love of God was not reserved just for them, just because they were religious. Jesus gave it freely and constantly. His gift was for everyone, and he invited people to partake in it. Let me just take a little. And we have a saying here at Calvary Church. I think it's probably, I don't know if my dad said it. Pastor is my dad, by the way, on the panel. If you don't know that context. We have a saying here at Calvary Church, and it's actually so important to us that we painted it on the wall. Downstairs, if you go down to the selfie drop and you kind of just like peek behind it, I give you permission to do it. It says, "We will do anything short of sin to reach people with the gospel," and it's painted on our walls. So that really means we're not gonna sin. So I'm gonna just lay that there. We don't reach people and we don't sin doing that. That kind of defeats the purpose. But we're gonna do everything up to that point to get people, whatever that means. And it's a privilege, honestly, to be a part of a church that gives me such freedom, because sin and everything else, that's a lot of space to do things, to be creative. We have an idea that the Lord has given us, and we present it to my leaders, my overseers, and they usually say, go for it and try it. A good example is these stickers. They asked me to make a sticker, and I said, can I make a guitar wearing a jean jacket? Because that's what a worship leader looks like. And they're like, try it. I tried it, and they're like, that's a guitar wearing a jean jacket. And I was like, okay, I go back to the drawing board. And then they wanted more of a story, and so like worship, creative, art. And that's, they usually say, go and try it. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes a couple drafts, but at least it was worth the try because we're trying to bring someone to Jesus. When someone sees us on a water bottle or a computer, they're going to ask you about why is a guitar, a computer, and an art brush, carrying an art brush on your computer. So methodologies are always changing. People back in the 90s probably never thought that one day the computer was going to rule every aspect of our lives. That's the one thing that we can't live about. The methods and the platforms and how we do it changes over time. It always will. It changes even when I started. Like, I started 2 years with this, and it's already, I'm sprinting to catch up. I'm a youth leader, and I have to ask those guys all the time what's going on because I can't keep up. The methods change, but the message never changes, and that's the gospel, and the gospel never changes. We're just changing the wrapping paper to match to give the gift. We reach the lost by loving them and meeting them at their level. We help take them to Jesus to find true fulfillment, because if we take them to the church, they're not going to find fulfillment. We're not trying to fill seats. We're not trying to make things happen. This church is not going to fulfill them, but Jesus is. And that's the overall vision of a creative team. We bring people to Jesus by and through the things we create, and we will do anything possible without sinning to bring them there. But how, you ask me? And I don't want to get too much on the practical because Curt's going to handle that. But I want to start even before we get to the practical. So how do we do it? Well, we have to start at the very, very beginning. Before you even create something, you have to develop the heart and the focus for it to keep you going. Which leads to my second point. Just kidding. We need to fill it to the brim. And some context. Now I'm going to go to John 2 in the New King James Bible. So if you want to follow me there in John 2, we're going to start in verse 5 and go down from there. One of my favorite passages in the Bible. And it says, let me find my spot. There it goes. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to a wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. Jesus said to her, woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My time has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it. Now there were 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. And Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And I want to focus on the servants real quick. Put yourself in their shoes, okay? They're scrambling. They just ran out of wine, their one job at a wedding, back in Bible times, which was a huge faux pas, running out of stuff at a wedding. They had Mary coming to them, telling them to do whatever this guy says. And who knows if they knew who this guy was. And so they have Jesus telling them to fill this 6 water pots full of water. And mind you, there's no faucet. There's no, it's not easy to fill 6 20 to 30 gallon pots of water. So they had to go to the well. They're scrambling. They're stressed. And, they had options if you really think about it. They could do a couple trips and kind of get the pots sort of full, like at the restaurant when they're pouring and they want to re-pour and they leave this much left. And you're like, why don't you just fill it up a little bit more to be full? That could have been full for them, leaving that much space. But look what they did. They could have complained too. Like, they could have complained about, like, why are we listening to this guy telling us to fill these water pots when we're, like, needing wine right now? Look what they actually did, though, back in verse 7. They filled them up to the brim. The brim. Not only did they fill these pots, they left no room. They didn't leave that little gap. And that's the heart that you need to start with when it comes to creating for Jesus. You need to fill it to the brim, whatever you're doing, and let Jesus take care of the rest, because those pots were filled with water, but they didn't stay water very long. And you could be thinking, you don't get it, Caitlin, you don't get it, you don't get it. I was voluntold to do my socials, my church's socials. I was voluntold. It's not my gift. I barely found out what TikTok was, and you just said it because you said it 5 minutes ago in your session. I don't even know. And if you're dealing with feelings of inferiority when it comes to your designs or creativity or your skills, let me remind you that God can do so much more with a willing heart than he can do with a heart that knows everything. Give it your all and let Jesus take care of the rest. And ultimately, it's not about you and your abilities. And I wrote some things down that I constantly remind myself of when I need to keep the right focus in serving the Lord creatively, both for my job and for my serving. So, like, I do a lot of creativity stuff for my job for the church, but, like, I also serve in photography and doing a lot of things like that. And these are some things that I thought of that I was like, oh, these are pretty good to share. So, first one is don't compare. There's a difference between inspiration and setting goals and comparison. When you start comparing, you will either open yourself up to discouragement because you start seeing all your shortcomings and your lack of skills. Or you can go the opposite way, and then you open yourself up to a lot of pride because you start comparing and saying, well, I did it better, or I would have done it this way. If you really do need to compare with someone, if that's how you're built, because that's kind of how I'm built, I need something to base it on, then compare yourself to yourself. Aim higher than your last. Though thought your last design was just okay, or you're like, ugh, you see it up and you're like, oof, that's pretty rough. Write those things down. Write what you want to change and aim higher than your next. So the next thing you create, don't repeat the same things. Aim higher than your last. Go step further. The second thing is I always strive for quality. And quality, don't get it wrong, quality does not just mean the highest equipment that you have. You don't have to have the best equipment, if you want to put it in that term. You don't have to have the best technology or the latest apps. There's so many options now. Don't be discouraged that you don't have stuff that you're like, oh man, they have this and this, and I only have my iPhone. My iPhone can do a lot. Faithfully use what you have, and remember that quality comes out in a lot of different ways, like consistency, your aesthetics, that you're actually planning and making things look right and the same, and posting, again, with the consistency that you're really, you're having a one voice, you're being consistent, you're interacting with people, that you're not just posting and leaving. And your branding, again, with your logos, that everything's in unison, that you're consistent, that you're not changing the logo every week. So people are like, what church is this? Keep growing is my third. Develop your skills, create those mood boards. Actually, forgot that I had this, but this is something new I tried this year, and it's the actual mood board of this whole conference. So this is what I presented to my overseers. I picked my colors. What is next? I picked my fonts. I found these, and I put them together. This is the vibe that I went when I designed everything. This is the merch ideas that, unfortunately, sorry, don't look at them too much. Not all my ideas got approved. These are all the logos that I just pre-done, so I didn't have to keep going. Like, oh, we need something for this. I just kind of knocked them all out. This is what I presented to Ian, actually, and Ian's like, I love it. And I was like, so then it kind of went on. And so, stretch yourself, keep growing. If you've never done a mood board, look it up and try it. If you never had it, do something different that stretches yourself. Watching tutorials, I can't tell you, TikTok again, has taught me so much, and I'm self-taught, so like TikTok is my college, honestly, of I made one separate just for graphics, and I can't tell you all the free stuff that you can get from other creatives just giving you things and wanting, not all of them are believers, but that's a blessing to me that they're willing to share those skills for free that they probably learned at school and paid for, so blessings that I didn't have to do that. So stay with the times. Again, like I said, stay relevant to the culture. Start knowing what everything's looking like. Right now, we're like out of the 90s and we're kind of going into this like futuristic 2000s, which I think is kind of too close to home. Like, how is the throwbacks already in the 2000s? And so I'm like seeing all these, like, again, youth leader, I'm seeing all these like freshmen coming in. I'm like, I wore that like not even too long ago. What is going on? They're like, this retro thing. I'm like, I don't even know what Hannah Montana or any Disney show. And I'm like, oh my goodness, guys. Like, it's, anyway, so that's a different breakout with youth leading. I'm just going to say that with those three things, you won't be easily overwhelmed as a creative if you keep thinking of your position, whether you're paid or not, that you set goals and you're aiming higher than your last, not somebody else's. Because you give the best you can and let God do the rest. Like I said, fill it to the brim. You don't know what you're doing? Fill it to the brim. Present it to the Lord. Take care of the rest. Because the more that you do that, your best is going to get better and better. Because your best is never best. It's always going to get better. And when you let Jesus handle the rest, something really cool happens. And I want to go back and finish John because I'm not done yet. So go back to John, verse 9. And it says, when the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom. Everyone at the wedding was enjoying the wine, having a great time, not knowing that the servants behind them were scrambling, listening to Jesus and Mary. But take a look again, one more time. Master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew. The servants knew, and they knew what Jesus did. And the same thing as creatives. We create things, we design invites, we post all the posts, we edit all the videos till our eyes are crossed. But ultimately, we give it to God, we fill it, we do our best, and we step back and wait to see what He does with them. Because people may never know where it comes from, who designed it, how many hours you put into it, working on it. But when we get the opportunity to see the fruit, we know it as servants, and we're blessed because that we are a part of it. And we faithfully filled those water pots to the brim, even when we had no clue what was going to happen or why we were even doing it in the first place. And I want to end on this. It's a screenshot. Sir Slide Master. Yay! It's a screenshot from one of our Facebook pages. And for some context, it was a regular picture from a non-event weekend. So it's just like we do service recaps every weekend. And one of the creatives, like, I should have covered this, to show you the framing, right? So, like, we have, Curt's going to take care of this, but, like, they saw a good shot, right? Smiley face, snapped it, sent it to me. I posted it. Now we go to Facebook. Let me just read the caption. It says, "Thank you for taking this picture of me and my dad." The lady in the glasses is actually talking. He just recently started coming to church, and this picture is an evidence of the amazing work that God is doing. Praise Him. Thank you for capturing this moment. What we saw is a smiling face and a good frame. She saw something so much more. She saw her dad in church with her that hasn't been to church in a long time. And it wasn't about who took the picture, what camera they used to take the picture, what filter was used, what third-party posting app was used. It was about seeing how God was reaching her dad's heart, and her dad is right behind her. And that's why we have creative teams, because every interaction we get from whatever creative thing that we do and produce, every like, every comment, anything is ministry, ultimately. And it's the one way that the Lord is using more and more, literally rapidly growing more and more, that we can't keep up, to reach people and to bring them to Himself. We need to love our world and always fill those water pots to the brim. And if you're starting out, these two things will invigorate you and keep and get you going. And if you're feeling burnt out, they're going to keep reminding you of why you do it. It's not because you have the greatest skills. It's because you're trying to bring people to Jesus. Be willing to try things and to reach people for the gospel. When you fully trust Jesus, He's going to make out that water to be wine. And whatever that might be for you. Maybe you're creative, maybe you're a photographer, maybe you're a graphic artist. Whatever that creativeness is that you have, just try it. Be different. Stretch yourself, grow yourself, and just see what happens. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But let the Lord take care of that. And so that's the heart and the vision that we have here at Calvary Church. Now, Curt, I'm going to pass it off to get more of the practical, to really implement so you start with that heart and vision, and now what do you do with it? So, Curt, let's flip. Oh, I need to give you the microphone. Do I need to do anything to mute it? Okay. Just be gentle. There you go. There's also a magnet.
How's that, Tim? All right, cool. All right, everybody. So my name is Curt, and I'm a part of the communications team here at Calvary Church. And but where I serve, though, is on the photography team, the creative team. So using my training as a photographer to really just serve in a capacity where I have a skill set. So I've been doing that for the last 10 years or so. And it's really been a blessing. So kind of piggybacking on Caitlin's presentation, I'm going to kind of jump in and show you a bunch of practical examples of how we can visually show how to capture kind of these moments Caitlin was talking about, as far as like that slide you just saw. And as I scroll through, I'm going to, just in your mind, think of the emotion that comes to your mind right away. Like, what is this picture saying to you, thinking of an emotion? And I'm going to kind of share, like, my thought, too. So with that, we'll kind of jump in. So this picture, just kind of think, in your mind, what does that say? In my mind, I'm thinking it's passion. So, I want to be in this moment where Pastor Ian is, worshiping the Lord, like we just have learned about so much in this conference. Something's happening there, and I want to be a part. And that would speak to, anyone looking at that picture. Okay, next. So this one, I'm thinking curiosity. So what is she doing? Is she worshiping, praying? What are those flags? All that stuff. What's happening in that picture? I'm curious. This one, I see ministry. So 3 guys praying together. I'm not sure who's praying for who. Perhaps the guy on the left. But either way, that's a moment where ministry is happening. This one, I see surrender. So many services, situations happen, and Pastor Ed says use this stage as an altar, and so this gentleman took advantage of that, and he's surrendering before the Lord. Probably in a worship service, maybe songs were being sung at the time, but pretty cool that that moment was captured, and we can see what he's doing. This one, I see joy. So what you don't know is that's actually his dad baptizing his son. And, this is not only a good photograph showcasing a moment in a baptism, but it is special for the family, just like that other picture was that we saw. And that's something they can remember as they kind of, just go forward in life. Like they have a tangible memory of that moment where a dad baptized his son. This one, I see emotion. So definitely, she's praising the Lord, worshiping, praying, but the Holy Spirit's moving and it touched her heart. So what's happening in that image is, is capturing to, it could be anybody. Like why would someone come to church and be moved to that point? And that would be something that would, draw me in. If I wasn't a believer, I'd be curious. This one, I see just a love of serving. So what you don't see is this, I was a youth leader, and this is one of our students, and there was one point in his life where he didn't necessarily want anything to do with God. And to see him serving main stage, using his gift and talents for the Lord is amazing. And such an amazing work God did in his life. This one, I just see in awe. So this is an Easter service, March 2020. You can see the flags up there for Missions March, completely empty sanctuary, and we're teaching an Easter service. So definitely a impactful moment in our church's history. And then to contrast that, I see this one. It's just, just God's glory. Like this was actually taken about a month ago, and you see from 2020 to 2023 to see people's hands up, the whole sanctuary just lit up. Can you feel that presence in that space? Like I think we get a taste of it here in this worship conference, but what an amazing stark contrast between the two. This one, I see joy. So as, it was a baptism, it was COVID, couldn't do baptism, so we went to a pool. And it was pretty cool. This one, I see fellowship, just a moment where, people just having fun, and that's the joy of that fellowship we have as a church. We can come together, and we can all just be, to come together as a church and have that fellowship is just a great thing. Yeah, here I see, a curiousness. So such a special moment, where a kid has a question about God. Like to capture that, that just touches hearts. This one, this one is very, very similar to that other picture that Caitlin showed. Another dad baptizing his son, but this one's even more special because that dad passed away about a month later. And you can imagine how special that is to that family. And we actually printed it out on canvas and signed it as a staff and gave this to them. But what a special moment, like as a creative team, to come alongside and capture moments for our congregation of life, because that's what a church is. It's life. It's our lives we spend at a church, and just to be a part of it, it's really, really amazing. So I like this verse. It kind of just sums up what we just saw. Let us, your servants, see you work again. Let our children see your glory. Psalm 90:16. So, and that's, I think, the heart, kind of piggybacking on what Caitlin shared, is that, we want to take pictures in a way where we, showcase God's glory, what's happening in this place, what's the culture of our church. You see people with these kind of emotions. It's very special. So capture the moment, not just the picture. So we're all about those moments. All right. So how do you get these moments to share? So I'm going to give you some practical examples of just how to succeed in a team of one or 100. And so I'm going to kind of slant this for photography, but because that's kind of the team we built. But it's important to know that this can be applied to any ministry you're looking to build. So that's where the practical part's going to come in for team building. So you might say, okay, that's great. That's definitely what I need for my church, my ministries. They need a team, and I got too many things going on, and I need help. But then you say, okay, well, I don't have an experience with this, whatever the thing is, and I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. But I think that's okay, because as I didn't really know necessarily what I was doing either. Like as you step into it, you realize you don't necessarily need it, because God will help you every step of the way. And besides, you have to step back and realize whose ministry it is anyways. It's not yours, it's the Lord's. And if he wants to build it, he will. And it's just like a church, it's, how many people come? It's like, well, that's not our problem. We just do what we do, and the Lord builds it. And that's the same thing with a team. So, kind of an example is, this creative team. I also oversee the coffee shop and the bookstore, and both of those teams, just started with nothing. Like it was just just one person just kind of moving along. And the coffee shop's kind of a real practical example because we opened it, we just hit 2 years, and I remember calling people, like the prior servants, and like, hey, you on board? You coming back? Let's go. We're going to reopen this thing. And it's like, oh, no, I'm good. I'm a pass. And a few people have said yes, but a lot said no. And I was like, okay, well, I always had the thought, it's like, well, I'll run this thing myself if I have to. And luckily, my family came alongside, and little by little, like God built it. And that's the cool part. Like you can actually witness like these servants down there today. It's like, wow, the Lord did build that team, and they do a great job. So kind of lastly in this opening part is just remember just this process doesn't necessarily it's not something that'll happen overnight. So all these things, like we're 2 years into the coffee shop, and even longer with the Photoshop or the photography creative team. And there's many seasons of up and down. Servants come on, they end, they come on, they leave, and you invest in them. So it sometimes it hurts when they leave, but I like to say, like, the fruit takes time to grow. So as you pour into people, plant seeds, God will give the increase and grow your team. So starting a team, this is my official first point. Ask yourself, who do I have? So you guessed it, me, myself, and I. So that's kind of where, like I mentioned, these teams, they start, it's you. And that's okay. And, and it's okay if it stays there for a while too, because, teams take time to grow. And, you're the person that kind of does it all. And you do this, like for photography, for instance, you take the pictures, you edit, and then you move on and you repeat. Next weekend, another service, repeat, and then you just keep going. So, but I think it's a good thing though, and I'll explain a little bit as we go. But, kind of, some questions as you consider starting a team. It's like there's some logistical questions too you have to consider too. It's like you're thinking it through, you're counting the cost. So, for one, I heard some people talking about, Photoshop and Lightroom and stuff. So yes, there's the gear, oh, I can't start a photo team because I have no gear. Well, not necessarily. So yes, it's nice to have all the latest and greatest stuff, but you don't necessarily need it. You can do a lot with a little. So, think of your phone. It's like how good of pictures they take nowadays, and that can get you started. And you never know. It's like somebody might join your team and be like, oh, okay, well, I actually used to do photography and I have all the gear. Oh, great. You're welcome aboard. And so, you just never know how the Lord will work. And sometimes you're surprised. And it's like, and that's just a blessing. And so that's one thing. Software. Do I need any software to do this photo team? And I'd say there's basics out there. There's also free stuff. So all the Adobe stuff, Photoshop, Lightroom. Yes, that's helpful, but it's not necessarily needed. You can use a lot of built-in programs that you can use too. Just think of like whatever's available to you to start. Use that. Start with that, and then go from there. Sometimes you can get in your head and just go like 20 steps forward, and you barely got to step 1. So that would be kind of another tip. Don't get ahead of yourself. Logistical wise, before you even take the picture, you ask yourself like, what do you want to see in the pics? Like I think from the examples I just showed, it's like, well, there's a lot of pictures in there where it's like, well, this is what I want. I'm with you, Curt. I want to show you that. But thinking it through and just thinking in your mind like, okay, this is what I want it to look like. And then just for example, like what don't you want to see? So in our church, for example, there's a security team, and they don't necessarily want to be in pictures, so we don't shoot them. We don't include them in the images. So Secondly would be just anything that could be embarrassing. Like, obviously you're not going to push that on Instagram or anything like that, because your goal is not to, embarrass people. It's just to show God's glory. So you'll kind of skip over those. And then also the senior pastor requests. So, you're going to be asking him and communicating with him. It's like, is he on board with you shooting, like running around the sanctuary, like as he's teaching, like what does that look like? We're given freedom here, but there are limits. So you just want to connect with your overseeing pastor and just see what they're cool with you doing. And also, just pushing yourself creatively. So Caitlin mentioned a lot of good stuff, and it is something you're going to push for, and just continue researching, discover more research, and it's very inspiring as you look for new ways to do things and just take in content. It's like, man, I want to try that. That looks really cool, that idea or that picture, that's neat. I do want to try that. And then go see what it does, and and try it and see what happens. So it's motivation and inspiration. So you're trying to discover your own look, so just keep going. And then lastly, just shoot consistently yourself. This does a couple things. One, it just gets people used to seeing you shooting around. Like you've probably all seen me running around this conference so far. So yeah, it's just getting people used to it. And depending on what service we jump into, it's like, oh, a whole new set of people are watching, and they should just have to. They'll learn to pay attention to the teaching, not us. And then it also, as far as team building goes, it gets people interested in what you're doing, so you can have a better chance of growing your team. So if they see you doing a thing and they're interested, hopefully they'll come talk to you, and that'll spark conversations. So I think that's always a good thing to do. And I think the most important part of just shooting consistently yourself is you learn how to do it yourself. So you're going to work out the bugs and just find something that will work for you to kind of get the pictures you need to get them out where they need to go. So, in order to kind of do the next step, we're going to talk about growing a team. You need to get a rhythm of what you want to do for yourself before you can show anybody else what to do. Without that, you're just going to be confusing people, and people are going to join your team and be like, man, I don't even know if I want to be on this team because nobody knows what they're doing. So you're gonna not have a good team to grow. So kind of a good process I like to mention is just do, and then you refine it, and then you create a process that can be duplicated. So you do it, refine it, create a process, and then the duplication part's the important part. And then you can train that process to somebody else. So, and then after that, you can create some standards, you can create like an onboarding process, and then it's like, okay, well, now I'm getting somewhere. Now I can see where this is going. So, with that, kind of my next point, growing a team. How do I do that? So this is where it gets fun. You have a rhythm down, you know what you're doing, you have a system in place, you have a vision like we learned about already through Caitlin, and now you're ready for some growth. So number one, it's people. So keep asking around, looking for people who have a talent in whatever area you're looking for. So photographers, let's look for those. If it's greeting, look for outgoing people. If it's people for children's, look for those people. You just line up whatever the situation is, and that's the person you're looking for, and also praying for. Really, you need to find them. But I think the key is relationships. Just meeting these people, establishing relationships, and a willing heart. That's what you're looking for in a person. You're looking for that personal relationship you have with them, and then, if their heart's willing, like, are they willing to do the thing you're asking for, or the team you're trying to build? And, the more people and what their background is, the easier it'll be to find these people in your church, whatever size it might be. it's a smaller church, a bigger church, whatever. Relationships are key. So, and then, just remember, like, as you're looking for people, like, for photography, for example, they have a lot of access. So you're not going to want everybody on your team. It's, a trusted selection. So that having a relationship will kind of go into that. And then secondly, incorporating youth into the team. So high schoolers specifically. So for photography, junior hires are probably a little too young, but high schoolers, they are key. And you've probably seen a bunch running around this weekend as well. That's our photo team. And funny enough, like that picture of me over there, like that's one of the high schoolers took that. So, so that's kind of cool.
You sound thrilled.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good moment praying for that sister, and it was good. So you can partner with your youth pastor on this. Just say, hey, if there's any talent, any people interested in XYZ, let me know, because that's what I'm looking for. And them knowing that can be like, oh, okay, just bookmark that, and then hopefully something will come by and they're touching base with you. Oh, there's a youth that's really interested in this. Okay, great, introduce me. So that's important. And the cool thing about youth is that they are talented, and chances are more likely that they've even taken a class on photography or design or technology, whether it's Photoshop, Lightroom, whatever. Like, they have a lot of skills that tend to be unnoticed, and then being a part of the team gives those high schoolers purpose and motivation. So I think that's really good too. They are the church, and they have time and ability to help and are eager to learn. So when we were looking for photographers, Caitlin and I and my wife Jess, we were all youth leaders, and COVID happened. We shut down. We started to come back, and they're like, well, you can't meet in our youth room if you've been up there. It's it's smaller because we can't social distance the chairs. So you're gonna have to go in the sanctuary. Well, that led to a whole bunch of problems because it takes a lot to run that sanctuary. We needed an AV team, maybe a camera person. We needed like greeters, pointing people to their seats. We did have an opportunity for a photography team. It's like, okay, well, we got to document this. And then, there's a whole bunch of other check-in team. There's a bunch of teams we had to come up with. And it was really neat because this was the opportunity that sparked youth going all throughout our church, serving in every capacity there was. So it was really neat to see this. So not only that's where our photography came from, many other ministries benefited from COVID because the youth started to serve, and it started in high school. And because they had a purpose and a vision to serve their immediate group, and then it branched from there. So nowadays, like a normal weekend, you'll see youth serving in children's, junior high, cameras, the res, the bookstore. They're everywhere, and it's amazing. So don't count them out. And I think kind of another part too, I was talking to Caitlin Dietz, one of the other speakers, and she asked me, hey, I can't make your session, but give me like a one-liner of your breakout session. And what's the key to team building? I was like, well, I don't really have anything on top of my head. But I was thinking about it, and later I was kind of thinking, I was like, okay, well, maybe there is something. And, just in thinking of building the res team and the photo team, it's like, I think it comes down to, you're never overlooking someone. If someone has a willing heart and they're available, you give them an opportunity to serve, and you might just be surprised on their skill set. So I can say that with many people on my coffee shop team, the bookstore team, the photo team, that possibly might have had no skills prior, but we trained them, and they're doing fantastic. They're really serving their hearts out for the Lord. So I would say that's a very special, distinguishing thing to write down. Just, don't overlook someone as they come and ask to serve, because you might just be surprised on how well they do. And, and then kind of as you just keep going and you start adding people and one thing, everyone has one thing they're good at. The people, like you're starting to grow this team and they start taking like tasks off your plate. So, maybe there's a social person, a video person, you got photographers now, and now you're starting to see this team kind of form. And then, just some things like as you continue to grow, just to keep in mind, you'll be interviewing people and what questions you're going to ask them and how you're going to explain kind of an overview of your ministry you're looking for. And, then there's like you have events like this where you have all your team like working in unison to support the event. Like, for this instance, all the photographers, working together to capture this event, get it on social, and just communicate what's happening in this place. And I think that's the beauty, that's the symmetry of a team coming together as one and doing whatever they're supposed to do. And I can say that for the coffee shop too. It's like a team coming together to do the purpose of serving the people that are coming. And it's a beautiful thing when it's executed in unison as a team and you're all pressing forward the same goal. It's like photography-wise, we're making the church look inviting, and the church comes alive, and the people want to be a part of it. And I think it's just a great outreach of, like the outsider looking in, the unbeliever, and seeing what's going on in a church, and it's not scary. Actually, I know what it looks like. Maybe I'll try going there. It's not that bad, and I think that's really cool. So. And then kind of jumping into training a team. So we already kind of talked about replicating yourself, and through that, they're taught to kind of follow your processes that you've established for them, and but with their own style. So there's one kind of main part of that is you're going to do like a tell, show, do method. So the first part in training is just to kind of go over them with the standards and the vision of the team, like Caitlin talked about. You're talking about examples of what they're looking for in whatever ministry you're doing. For photography, we're going to show them like picture examples, and then the general flow of what a service looks like. You're communicating the expectations and what it looks like, and then it's really time just for kind of the show part. So they're shadowing you. You have an example to follow around as you do it. You kind of talk and show, and they're getting used to it. And here we have like a loop where we start downstairs, then we go upstairs, and maybe go to junior high, and then hit up children's at the end, and then we kind of do it again. So we're going to show them, that kind of loop, that rotation we do, and it works pretty well. And then, they're going to start doing it. So slowly have them do the task, and, there'll be questions and kind of going back and forth. And, I think it's just a feeling of being comfortable. So, you need to be comfortable with them running around with a camera and, during worship service or teaching or things like that. And then they need to be comfortable too, because, you don't want them like walking on eggshells trying to figure out, should I do this or should I do that? And it's just it goes both ways, just kind of getting them familiar with all the processes. And then, kind of the last part of that is just, following up, and, they're getting more freedom, getting more to do things. And then, hey, how'd that go? Whether they, are doing things well, or you need to correct them, just with grace and gentleness, and just really working with that person. And then, just communicating and scheduling them, and what does that look like, and is there any software involved with that, or just how are you going to communicate, like, when are they supposed to serve? And I think just being a good communicator is important for growing a team, because if you're not communicating, then people won't know what to do, or they might come and they're like, well, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing, and then they're just done. Then you lose a servant. And sometimes that's okay, and it'll happen. But it was interesting. Just before this conference, I had one of the photographers, and he just started. I'm getting him trained, and we did the loop, and it's like, okay, let's do this. And after about a month, he's like, you know what? I don't think this is really for me. I think I want to go serve in this other ministry. And I was like, okay, well, wherever you think the Lord's leading you, that's okay. But you'll have like stuff like that happens where you'll add someone, and then you might lose someone. So I think the key is just not to get discouraged when that happens, and it's not an overnight process. So, and then kind of the next part is just like we have. I remember like getting started, and this was like quite a long time ago, and Pastor Josh was my overseer, and he was telling me, okay, yeah, go take pictures this weekend and whatever, and I was like, okay, great. So I went and took some pictures and gave them to him, and then he ends up posting them eventually, and it was and then he found me later. He's like, hey, I posted your picture, and the post is really doing well. And it's like, oh man, that's great. And it was really encouraging, like, to see that happen. So I think the kind of that last part is just encourage your servants as they jump on board creatively. Like, what does that look like? And they see their pictures. It's like, yeah, I got one out there, and it's gonna do its thing, and it's helping the church, grow, bring more people back. And I think that's really neat that you'll have. It's really encouraging as a new servant, like especially with photography. It's like, well, I took some pictures. They're probably not any good, but if it's what you can do at the time, I think that's really good, and it's a place of starting point. And I like what Caitlin says, is that you start, somewhere, and then you just continue to improve, and then you do, better the next time. It's like you're improving on your last best, but you're still, being inspired by others too. And I think that's really, really important to do. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up here. I have some resources that I kind of have made over the last few years. So you can scan that and download away. And just remember, they're an example, kind of a template. So no church is really copy and paste, but you can use it as a template, as you start maybe specifically a photography ministry or whatever ministry. It might help you create some standards and some processes. All right, does everybody get it? All right, cool. So, and then I like this verse I wanted to share, is that, it's Psalm 97:6, and it's the heavens proclaim his righteousness, and every nation sees his glory. And the next one is Psalm 19:1. The heavens proclaim the glory of God, and the skies display his craftsmanship. So kind of a nice summary verse of like what we do in a visual ministry, that, we want to proclaim, his craftsmanship, that every nation sees his glory. And I think that's a good goal to have. So, with that, that's pretty much the end, but we have a couple minutes left. Just want to open it up to see if anyone has any questions, and then, we'll be around after as well.